All right, so since you guys have been begging and asking, no one's really been asking, YouTube. So here's the deal. My main squeeze is Instagram. That's really all I spend my time on. I don't spend a lot of time on YouTube, but I am having people asking me on a pretty regular basis, like, why don't you have a full YouTube? And the truth is, I do have a channel. I just don't ever post to it. So I am gonna give it a good shot. I promise, guys, I'm gonna give it a shot to try to post like at least once a week. And people seem to really enjoy the content, the construction content, the how-to stuff. So YouTube is a better place for the long format, of course. And so I promise to give it a try. Okay, so if you don't know me, my name is Josh. I'm a licensed contractor and a full-time real estate investor. So I flip houses, I'm building a rental portfolio, and I build new construction, spec homes only. So we don't work for other customers. We only work on stuff that we own, which is a lot of fun. So we love it. We love what we do. I get to work with my hands, build stuff like this, and for myself, I don't have to work for anybody else. So to start off, to kind of re-kick up the channel, what I'm gonna be talking about is this project here. I am building a garage. It is a 36 by 30, 2 stories. I'll take you inside. It's kind of a mess, just bear with me. So it is 11-foot ceilings upstairs. I've got extra space up here that I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with yet. It is gonna get a bathroom upstairs. And then I think I'm gonna try to put a urinal in downstairs. But so here's the space upstairs. These are bonus trusses. So this space up here is like 30 by 18 or something like that. So, and then down here, like I said, I've got the 11-foot ceilings, and it's a little over 1,000 square feet. So this is gonna be my shop, man cave, attached to my house through a carport. So anyway, so this is what I've got going on in my spare time lately. What this video is gonna be about is how to do Hardie siding. This is a popular siding. It's cement board siding. We use a brand called Nichiha, but it's basically Hardie. It's the same thing. And it's a very popular siding down here in the South, where it is completely waterproof, it's rot proof, it's fireproof. You know, it is a hassle. I'm gonna tell you, it's a little bit of a hassle to work with. If you're familiar with like LP siding or other wood products or recycled wood products or PVC products, this is much more difficult to work with than those. So I'm gonna run you through a couple quick tips, the basics, a couple tools you're gonna need, a few things just to keep in mind, and then we'll get to the install. So you'll need a number of tools to do this job, all your basic hand tools, and you'll need an air compressor and a nail gun. But here's kind of the 2 specific things that I wanted to point out. Hardie, any cement board siding requires a special blade, and it looks like this. It's got 4 teeth on it, and it'll be labeled as like a cement board siding blade. You can get these. I get these at Lowe's by Crescent. Diablo makes one, probably some other brands as well. You do not want to cut Hardie siding or any sort of cement board siding with anything but this type of blade. In a pinch, you could use a tile cutting blade, like a continuous rim, something meant for cutting like concrete block or tile. It works as well, but I'll say if you're doing a big job, I really recommend getting this type of blade. In addition to that, we use a coil siding nailer. It shoots like anywhere from 2 to maybe 2.5 inch nails. The great thing about the coil is that you get a ton of capacity. You're not refilling this all day long. Gecko gauges. So these are not a must-have, but I'll say they do make life way easier. You can get these online. I'll drop a link in there if I remember to. But basically the way these work is they slide up in, they lock in place. You could do 2 or 3 of them depending on your length. And then you can set this to whatever height you want, set whatever reveal. So I've got ours set at 7 1/4. That means there's an inch of overlap, and basically set them to 7 1/4. Once you have your first row level, you can just run after that. You'll slide your next piece down inside there and it'll sit. So basically it holds the board up for you and ensures that you have an even reveal. It's a no-brainer. You need to get a pair, okay? And then depending on what you're doing, you may need a brake. So if you're just doing a single story and you're not having a freeze board like we've got, you'll see up here, we've got a freeze board separating the vertical board and batten from the horizontal lap. You may be able to buy this flashing without it, but basically I use the brake to create my own flashings, and I think some places you can get a flashing. It's called a Z flashing. I don't know why they call it a Z. It's not really a Z shape. I guess it's kind of a Z shape, but basically you're breaking a head flashing over top of any freeze boards, over top of your window and door trim. I'll show you what that looks like. But I use a brake to manufacture that, and that's really a simple process. But over anywhere where you have a light block, for instance, I've got that flashing over that. I've got the flashing over my freeze board. And then you'll also have it over top of your window trim. So you don't want to trim around your window and then just butt your siding to it. You want it to have this head flashing over top of your window trim. So that way, any water that comes down and in can't run behind. It'll have to come out. That is what we use for that. But you can buy, at certain places, you can buy that flashing pre-made. So don't sweat that detail either. If you don't have a brake, don't go buy one for just this job. You know, they're a very expensive tool to own, but you can get away without it if you can find that flashing at a local, you know, Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever your shop is. Now let's talk about starter strips. On your very first row, you'll notice, you know, when you're siding, the way the siding gets installed is it's lapped, right? So this has an angle to it. This has a gap here and there's an angle. So you want your first piece to look like that as well. You don't want to just slap your first piece on and have it be straight and then all the other pieces don't, you know, are pitched like that. So what you do is on your very first row, you want to rip a starter strip. It could be like 1 inch or 1.25 inches wide. This is just a scrap piece. This is not how wide. I usually make it thinner than this. But you're going to go around and you're going to shoot your starter strip on the bottom first, and then install your first row like this. That way it has the same pitch as the rest of the pieces. All right, so one of the first things you need to do when you're running Hardie or any cement board siding, or any siding of any kind really, is get a control line in. So that means getting a line across the bottom all the way around the perimeter of the building. There's a couple different thoughts on this. My personal opinion is that with siding, you want to be straight, not necessarily level. And what I mean by that is your building may not be perfectly level. And sometimes, especially on where walls come down and there's an eave, if you run your siding perfectly level, you may see where your building is out of level. So sometimes it makes more sense to split the difference, maybe measure down from the soffit and check that against level. Like for instance, if you don't have a laser level, if you pull down from your soffit and snap a line, pull down an even measurement on both sides, snap a line, and then take your 4-foot level or your 6-foot level, whatever level you got, and check that line and see how it looks. You know, you want to get it level or pretty close to level, but also take into consideration, you know, making your reveals even and having the proper distances that way. So that's how I do it personally. I'll measure down, I'll snap a line, I'll check it with a level, and then I'll snap across and all the way around the building have a perimeter. So between any of these joints, okay, we use a flashing behind, okay, and it goes behind and then it laps over top. So this will go in between these joints before we nail these two boards together. Some type of flashing. They make flashing for this. I usually just use window wrap tape, and but it'll go behind, and actually you can kind of see it'll go behind, almost see in between there, but it'll go basically behind this joint and over top of the next joint. And you can see we ran this one a little bit too low, and I'll have to knife that off. But the purpose of this is any water that, you know, drips down and goes in this joint has a way to get out and doesn't run back behind and rot out the wall. So really, really important step that I think gets missed by a lot of people. Otherwise, you're left trying to caulk this joint, and you all know what happens. Any caulk joint, especially when you have a butt seam like this, that caulk joint is going to want to break apart over time, and it becomes a maintenance issue. So what I prefer to do is to not caulk these joints and to do the flashing behind there. Whenever you're trimming on a window, the way I like to do it, I think it looks the best, is to run the tops long and the sides go in between. So what I do is I'll just measure from top to bottom, and I'll cut two that are this distance. It's 47 and 5/8 light, so we'll cut two of those. Another quick tip, this is sometimes hard to remember. We always plastic over the window first. That way I can nail my trim over the plastic, and then all I've got to do is knife it out after paint. I don't have to sit here and tape off the whole window when it's time to paint. all installed, one of the last things to note is the caulking. So there's a couple different ways you could do this. You could use regular painter's caulk, but personally I don't recommend it. I like using OSI. Quad is a great product. I'm telling you, it will not crack. It'll last years and years and years. But caulking with Quad is difficult if you don't know what you're doing. There's a couple quick tips. First of all, when you're caulking with Quad, you don't caulk in your traditional manner where you're gonna just kind of run it down and then finger it. You're really not gonna tool Quad. Now, can you tool Quad? Yes. There's a couple different ways to do that. They make tools for that, or you can use a wooden stick. Some guys like popsicle sticks and those kinds of things. Personally, I try to avoid tooling it all. And the way you can do that and have it still look pretty clean, in my opinion, is starts with the cut. So you'll notice on here, I don't know if you can see in the video, but there's 1/4 inch, 3/8, and 1/2 inch. There's markings, and I usually cut somewhere between the 1/4 inch and 3/8 mark. And that's a pretty big cut. You'll notice this tube is long, and there's really no way almost to cut a small cut on a Quad tube. And that's because it's meant to be applied a certain way. I want this outside tip to be the cleanest part, so I will go from my outside of the edge to make sure that this outer edge is nice and clean. Next up, make sure you poke it. So go ahead and poke that. But the key with caulking this way is to keep a very even flow, and you're using this tip as your guide. And so this is actually gonna create the finished product. It's gonna be a thicker bead than it would be with like painter's caulk, but that's kind of what creates that ability to have it stretch and it'll last a long, long time. Okay, so I think I've covered most of the basics on Hardie siding. The next stage will be paint. Just because I know somebody will ask, this portion right here is gonna be a little decorative roof that comes out over these garage doors, and that's why that's there. It's getting a metal roof, and I just haven't framed it yet. I'm trying to decide if I wanna paint all the siding first before putting this roof on, because I don't wanna have to mask around all the new metal roofing. So, but yeah, any questions, hit me in the comments, but I think I mostly covered it. Start to finish, just about everything you need.